All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol, and we're here with Adam Sarich, a fellow BC hunter. Adam's been on the podcast before. I can't remember what episode it was, but it was somewhere within the first 50. And I think we actually spent quite a lot of time talking about blacktail.
Blacktails, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you just got back from a successful sheep hunt, and you, to me, are one of these, like the definition of a BC killer. And I know you're a pretty humble guy and you're not going to take that very well, but it's funny to me how like the real guys, like the real legit killers in BC are the guys who you don't make a big show of it. You are a firefighter by day, you squeeze in your hunting, you've got a young family at home, but like every year you go out and you don't just, and I know you're not, and I don't want to bastardize this term because I actually like the term trophy hunters, but I know you wouldn't consider yourself a trophy hunter, but like your the reliability with which you're bringing back like book animals on a regular basis is extremely impressive. And it's inspiring to me. Do you know what I mean? Like I love following your page because, and it's all like challenging stuff. Like finding big blacktails is really hard. That sheep that you just brought back is really challenging. And I know we talked about this in the first podcast, so I don't want to go over it, too in depth. But you come from like you grew up hunting with your old man, come from a hunting family, have been hunting most of your life.
Yeah, for sure. Mostly when it started, it was bow hunting.
Right.
We did a lot of archery when I was younger, and then switched to rifle hunting in, I don't even remember exactly what, I think it was 2015 was when I shot my first 4-point mule deer with a rifle.
Okay.
And then, just more of that. Like it was mule deer hunting, started it. And then with my schedule from work, living in Chilliwack, brought in a bunch of like blacktail hunting.
Yep. And
from there, just learning more about it and different animals and different adventures and things like that.
So I definitely have some more like strategy and tactic based questions, but I'd love to hear the story because it was funny. I got out from getting my ass kicked on a goat hunt, and one of the first pictures is I see with you and your ram, and there's something in the caption about 139 kilometers hiked and 43 of it with a ram on my back. And I'm just, by the way, for people listening, I have a new kitten. His name is Potato. He's kind of walking around making a nuisance of himself, but if you see him flicking at cords, or if you see anybody reaching down and doing stuff, it's because Potato is very curious. So we tried to lock him upstairs, and we made it about 30 seconds before he made it very clear that he was not content with being locked upstairs. So yeah, this is Potato. If you see him, now you know what's going on. So let's dive right into it. This was your first thin horn, right?
No,
it's not. So your other sheep was a thin horn as well.
All of them are stone sheep.
All of them are stone sheep.
Yeah.
Okay. Why did I think that other one was a bighorn? Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a hunting partner and I 2 years ago did a fly in.
Yeah.
And we double headed opening morning.
Okay.
We flew in a couple days before the season.
Yep.
And awesome hunt. And then planned another one. And with all of the north, pilots wouldn't take us in anymore because they're strictly working for different outfitters, and the outfitters don't want residents. So
okay, for people not from BC, this is a very frustrating thing. There is a whole bunch of spots that are known as kind of like resident hunter areas. I could name a dozen lakes right now that I won't do it because I'm sure it'll piss somebody off. But you can get dumped at those lakes all the time. They dump 8 guys off opening morning and on the 30th and the 29th and all that. But there's also a selection of lesser known areas that are still historically very popular sheep areas for people in the know, but it's challenging to get dropped off at those because the outfitters have deals going with most of the pilots and they won't take residents. Some people won't fly residents into those areas.
Right. And a lot of it is like we weren't doing float plane. So you'd have like a small airstrip.
Yeah.
the outfitter builds those airstrips.
Right.
It is crown land, and you have just as much right to be there as anybody else.
Yep.
But if the outfitter didn't build that strip, then
There's
can't
politics
land.
involved there
Absolutely.
for sure.
So, yeah, long story short, we couldn't get back to where we wanted to go. So we made a new plan. A few years ago, I bought one of those inflatable jet boats.
Yep.
And we were like, well, let's go with that and then hike from where we can get to. And it ended up being, I think we did like 270K in the jet boat, like that both ways.
Can we back up a little bit? And you don't have to be ultra specific, but like how did you go about finding the location for the second spot? Are we going off like pure e-scouting? Did you have some tips from some people of a known area? It's just like, what can you share about some of the strategies that you use to go find a new location?
It was a new location, and we tried to get as close to where we were as we could on our own.
Okay.
So it was same general area. We
Gotcha.
couldn't get as close because we couldn't like fly in.
Yep.
So we knew there was rivers and creeks and stuff in that area. So I was like, well, why don't we just try and boat there? So I was fairly certain that a real jet boat wouldn't make it in a big part of it.
Yep.
And the joys of that inflatable is you just bounce off rocks, and if you don't make it up a rapid, you float down, and you can drag it around things. You can, it kind of opens up a lot of area.
What's the kind of cost point for something like that?
The boat was cheaper than the motor. I believe the boats right now are in like the $6,000-$7,000 mark.
Okay.
And the motor was $7,000-$8,000.
Okay.
So fairly like same price as a quad, really.
Sure. Yeah. And do you feel, because I'm assuming you have a background in jet boating, because you don't. No. Okay, that's going to be my follow-up question. What type of skill level do you need to feel comfortable using that as a tool?
I would say as much as I have. Like, we've run it up a bunch of skinny rivers and did testing for weight, and because obviously you don't have a ton of power, so you can't have a lot of weight, which was our big thing with how much fuel can we bring with our packs and all of that.
Yeah.
But with the inflatables, it's kind of almost like there's a safety net, because if you're in a metal boat and you don't make something, you're going to ding your boat. Or like, I've been on a couple jet boats in the Fraser, and that's my experience with jet boating. I've never operated one. I've never any of that. So very new to boats.
I went up to Musqua, and I was like, you need to know what you're doing to do this, because you're going very fast. You need to know when they go around the bends, they know the specific area of the bends that they're hooking, but they're also their boat is way heavier and they're going way faster.
Right. So we can do about 30K.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem was we had a bunch of rain before we went up, so all the rivers were high. So there was times where we were doing like walking speed, like fighting the current.
Oh,
so
right.
It took us 12 hours to boat in and 4.5 to boat out.
We
were lighter
crazy.
Coming out, like with the less fuel and everything.
Right.
But yeah, with the inflatable boat, if you screw up or go in something too shallow, two guys can drag it wherever you need to drag it.
Yep.
You can.
Did you bring waders or anything like that?
No, just Crocs. And we just brought a separate set of clothes for when we got the boat to hike in with. Kept those in a dry bag. And we did quite a bit of, like, you'd have to ferry across because the current's too strong over here. And it works awesome. And not knowing anything about boats, we got there. So
I love the creativity, man. Okay, so no one's going to take us where we want to go. So how do we get there ourselves?
So we figured out how to get there, and then we ended up hitting a waterfall that we didn't know was there. We couldn't, and neither one of us had ever stepped foot on any of these rivers. Like, never seen them in person.
Yep.
So we hit this waterfall, and we were like, well, we could drag the boat around, but the water, it looked like it was going to keep getting worse. So that added about 10K to our hike from where we thought we could get to.
Okay.
So we just started hiking from there and made it into where we wanted to go. That extra 10K ended up taking us like 10 hours because you're in that moss.
Oh,
you know, the moss with the really short trees that are touching, and you're all scratched up. And funny story we can talk about later, but both of us bear sprayed ourselves on that trip.
This is why I hate bear spray, man. Years in the forestry industry, the amount of dudes I've seen pop bear spray with corks, put them in totes, and then drop, brush knives on them. And God.
Well, we had it on our hip belt.
Yeah.
And my hunting partner did it first, but you're in that thick, there's no trails.
Yeah.
And one stick pulls the safety off, and the next
one
stick
pulls
pushes
the
it, and just a
trigger.
little psh, like so. His side, and he did it on the way in. I was lucky; we were about a kilometer from the boat when mine happened. But man, it burns.
Oh, yeah.
It is not fun.
No.
And it's like one of those pains that it's all you can think about.
Yeah.
But you know there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
So you just have to suck it up and keep going so you can hit water to try and wash off.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we hiked in, and we hiked in on the 28th, I believe, because our plan, we didn't know how long it was going to take us, so we wanted to go in early.
So we got a full 12-hour boat ride to get in. We got a full 10-hour. So did you camp for the first night
At the boat.
At the boat, and then you wake up the next day. You hike the 10K.
Well, that was just that part. We made it there by, I think it was like 4 in the afternoon.
Okay.
And then we hiked till 9 that night. I
Okay.
think that day we did like 26 kilometers the first day.
Jeez.
And then we had another 15 or 20-ish to go to where we wanted to get to.
Right.
And then
Any horse trails? Any big game
further
trail?
in,
Okay.
after our first probably 15K, we started finding some trails.
Okay.
Which, as you know, it's like a highway, so it
Dude,
makes
it's like
such
gold.
a big difference.
It changes everything.
So yeah, glassing the whole time. Day 1, found a pretty good sized ram skyline, like 3 kilometers away. So I mean, it was awesome. Like when you first get in, you're
motivation
like, oh,
is
there's a ram.
strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And glassed our way in. We ended up finding 3 legal rams that trip, and the ram that we ended up taking, we found on the 30th, and then we found another legal ram on the 31st that was smaller, and like we could tell it was 7 years old and barely. It was over the nose, but just barely. So the opener, we left at 4 a.m. and hiked way in.
So let me back up for a second, because we were actually just having a great conversation about really powerful optics actually being of more use to novice sheep hunters who are looking to kind of squeak out those barely legal sheep. And that when you are a more advanced hunter and you start targeting older sheep, and this is something I remember from my podcast with Clay Lancaster, he's like, dude, when you see the bruisers, there's not even a question.
Yeah.
They got the pot bellies, they got the sway backs, the way they walk around. So what types of things were you seeing on the one sheep that you did end up targeting that were just like hallmarks to you that you were like, oh, this is a sheep I want to go after?
In all honesty, it wasn't the monster, like no look ram. My ram from 2 years before that was 3 or 4 inches over the nose. It was huge. I think when we first saw it, it was 700-800 yards with the binoculars. Like there's a legal ram,
Right.
Like it ended up going book. It was just it was awesome.
Yeah.
So there was no, you didn't have to spend time looking at it. This one, it was actually very strange. It still had its full winter coat. And part of it was like shedding off. So it looked kind of haggard.
Okay.
One side was broomed off. The other side we thought had the lamb tip still. Ended up it was broomed as well. So it was broomed on both sides.
Okay.
But originally,
Did it still break with that second side?
it did by
Okay.
like 1.5 to 2 inches,
yeah, okay,
somewhere
so
there.
that's good.
We knew it was
Yep.
legal by curl. But again, it wasn't nearly as big as the ram that I had taken 2 years ago.
Right.
So we backed out and left it and kind of kept looking for other rams. And from what we've seen, our plan was to try and take 2 rams again, which has its own logistics, of course. But so we wanted to go out and another look at it on the opener, and got to a pretty good distance and counted rings both sides a bunch of times. And we were very certain it was 9 and full curl for sure. So we figured, like, we're here, we might as well, like, we'll take this one and then we can keep hunting. And when it ended up happening is there was a super old ram that was, I'm thinking it was sick. I really want to message Bill, I forget his last name.
I know who you're talking about. I've emailed him before.
Because we just did that Wild Sheep Society thing in Abbotsford. We went to the sheep aging seminar
yeah.
they had, where he did a big talk.
Yep.
And this ram, his last ring was only 1/4 inch.
Oh.
And the ram itself was the size of a 1 to 2 year old blacktail.
Right.
It was tiny. Like when we got up to it, like when we move it compared to the sheep we had 2 years prior, there was nothing there. And when we took the hide off, there's just bones and very little meat.
That's crazy. And you're saying his teeth were just...
His teeth were gnarly.
Yeah.
Like huge. They were all black. A bunch of them were missing. And the biologist ended up saying it was 11-year-old ram.
Right.
Oh, he was probably not going to make that winter. And
Perfect.
the fact that he still had his winter coat, I'm thinking he wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of in the rib meat.
I wonder if that would be triggered by testosterone as well, because there has to be some type of mechanism that lets them know to start going through that transition.
Something, yeah. And so we deboned everything, and like I said, from there to back to the boat was 44K. So him being a little bit lighter wasn't.
Yes.
He still tasted awesome, so it wasn't the worst thing. But so I didn't know he was quite that old, because those. I don't know if you've listened to where they say like there's never the ring hidden in the hair.
Right.
Like that's a whatever, and this one for sure was, because the last ring is barely a quarter inch.
So he's barely grown. He's done.
He's barely even living. He's not putting anything into his horns. And if you look at those pictures, his horns were super weird color too. Like they were the color of deadhead horns. Oh. And the biologist was saying that because horns are hair, so same as like when you get really old, you get gray hair.
Yeah.
So he just wasn't putting any nutrients into them, because they were super light colored, which made the rings easy to count.
Yep. It would too, because then the darker really stand out.
Yeah. But I guess back to the original question was about the
age.
The age and of the optics.
Yeah.
But what we were saying was, when I found that ram 2 years ago, you could have had a Walmart spotting scope, because it's just like a no-brain, like the no-look ram that they talk about, right?
Yeah.
I'm by far no sheep expert. I've only been on 4 sheep hunts.
You're killing me, bro. Oh my God.
Luckily, I have 3 rams, but so
75% kill rate on sheep. It's just wild, man.
Yeah. The very first one was he was broken off on one side and then broomed. He's super old as well. He had 10 rings and he was broken, like nowhere near full curl.
Right.
I got 40 yards from him and still counting with the spotting scope, because I was super scared of shooting an illegal ram.
First one too.
Yeah, like it was very sketchy first ram. But I remember when I brought it in to, then it was still taxidermist doing the CIs.
Yeah.
And it was Basil, I forget his last name, just outside of Hudson Hope, as Peace Taxidermy.
Yeah.
And he's like losing his mind how cool this thing was. And I almost felt bad, because the whole time I'm like, oh, I wish I shot like a ram with 2 horns. Like I just wanted like a sheep, right?
Yeah.
Like what you think of. So yeah, I definitely had lots of good luck, and a ton of it is luck, like right spot, right time. Glassing definitely comes into like being able to find them.
Yeah.
For sure. But
talk to me a little bit about, because the other thing is we were talking about marksmanship and gun building and rifle strategy and stuff before. Talk to me a little bit, and there's all kinds of controversy going on in the rifle world right now between like large caliber and monolithic versus, smaller calibers and highly fragmenting bullets. And from a guy who has been very accomplished at very respectable mountain distances, I'd love to know your approach to like what type of gun you're taking on this hunt, what type of preparation you're going through and all that kind of stuff, so that when you do find an animal of this caliber, you're comfortable and confident that you're going to be able to, step up to whatever shot you might be given.
For sure. The rifle I took on this hunt was a 280 Ackley improved I built with a Tika action and IBI carbon barrel with MDT carbon chassis, the Hunt 26, they call it.
How do you like the Hunt 26? Because that's the one I'm kind of looking at right now.
I really like it. Just from a comfort standpoint, from prone to standing. Some people hate like the pistol grip.
See, and I've got a fierce with a pistol grip. I'm all for it now. Mm-hmm. It took me a little while to
like
get used to it. It's
stock.
A normal stock, but it has the pistol grip. So the first couple times I'm like, where am I supposed to put my hand? Mm-hmm. But now that I'm used to shooting like that, and it's not an actual pistol grip. It's like a molded, but it's in that style where you like wrap your hand around.
Yeah. This being like an actual pistol grip, like your thumbs around the back of it. And I just find it extremely comfortable.
Yeah.
That Hunt 26 is super light. It's got the carbon in the right spots.
Do you fold it when you put it on your pack?
I didn't buy the folder because it's lighter.
Okay. Oh, the non-folding is lighter.
Lighter, yeah.
Okay.
To get 26 ounces is no folder, no Arca rail.
Okay.
I don't know if I would ever fold it because I put it on my pack all the time, but it only has a 21-inch barrel I built that one with.
Okay.
So it doesn't stick up overly high.
Right. And you're a tall guy to begin with. So, okay.
So I've been shooting a mix between the 180 ELDM.
What's your total, what do you got on it for optics, and what's your total scoped weight?
I have the Vortex Razor LHT 3 to 15 by 44.
Okay.
And the total weight, I've got tally rings on it. I also took the Action and cut the whole top of it off. Like the Tika comes all the way over on the top.
Right.
So I took all that off. I ended up getting just over 4 ounces out of the Action and fluted the bolt and some things like that just to make it lighter.
Yeah.
All in is like 7 3/4, like full of, it's got 5-round.
Okay. So that's
magazine.
loaded, scoped, whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's under
And
8.
do you got a brake on it?
I do, but I don't bring it hunting.
Okay.
So I use it when we shoot lots in the summer.
Yep.
But I don't use the brake when I hunt because it's just so loud.
Yeah.
For like you
Yeah,
shooting.
my 300 PRC with a brake on it is like, it's something else. Bro.
I almost want to start hunting with the brake, so I force myself to wear earplugs.
Yeah.
Because I don't now.
Yeah.
And I know that's not good.
Yeah.
Even though it's, a couple shots, but it's not good for your hearing. I'd like to put in earplugs, but especially blacktail hunting and the amount of times that you don't really have time to sheep hunting, you would have time.
You do.
So
yeah,
I almost left it on, so I would force myself to wear the plugs. But yeah, I made a break for that one, and like I said, in the summer, use it lots.
Okay.
I hand load, so I've been using the 180 ELDM and the 175 ELDX. Did a bunch of like water tests for weight retention on both. You hear so many different things about using the ELDM for game. I did it a ton before I built that rifle. I had a 6.5 Creedmoor, a Browning Hell's Canyon.
Yep.
I shot the 147s. I hand loaded them. Shot my first sheep with that. I shot my goat at 350 yards with that. Bunch of blacktail. It's worked flawlessly. Never had an exit. Never had an animal go more than 5 yards though.
Right.
So, like you said, there's the two schools of thought. There's like if you listen to Hunt Backcountry podcast with Joseph von Benedict, has tons of great info on everything to do with shooting. I've listened to him tons. I got a lot. He's probably part of the reason why I went the 280. Speaks super highly of that. He's in the camp of he wants penetration and exit and everything. I've shot some bullets that did that, but with blacktail hunting, when you're in super thick, I would rather waste 5 pounds of meat and the animal doesn't go anywhere, and you know where it is, has been kind of my thought.
Yep.
Now when they're making the new monolithics are apparently getting better at everything. So I haven't played with them at all, but.
Have you heard the podcast that the Hunt Backcountry guys did with that form?
I did. Super interesting. And it goes back to what I've seen on game with that 140. And so with that, with my 6.5 Creedmoor with 147 grain ELDM and my 280 Ackley with the 180 grain ELDM, no difference. Like if I had all of the kill shots filmed, you wouldn't be able to be like, oh, that was with a 7mm.
Right.
And I know the 280 is not a, huge 300 PRC. It's not a massive high power, but there's a way more weight. It's going faster, all those things. And similar to that podcast where he's talking about no matter what bullet you shoot, that you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. And I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
And that's why the rifle I'm building now, I wanted to build it as light as possible.
Yeah.
And I did 6.5 Creedmoor again, where I'm going to go back to that 147. And I went with the Creedmoor over the PRC because with a bottom metal, so there's no magazine, I can fit 2 extra rounds in the gun because PRC's fat chamber. So now you can only fit 3. Some rifles are only 2.
Yeah.
Whereas you go with standard cartridge, and now I can fit 5.
You can also go with a shorter barrel with a Creedmoor as well, correct?
Yeah, I think it makes less of a difference.
I just noticed the Tikas that I'm comparing. So I'm looking at the Tika CRT right now, and their 6.5 Creedmoor comes with a 20-inch barrel, and their 6.5 PRC comes with a 24-inch barrel. And when I go look at proof barrels and stuff, their Creedmoor barrels tend to be 2 to 4 inches shorter. And maybe that's because like the PRC has more powder, so they're trying to give it more barrel to like get up to speed.
Well, for the power to burn in the barrel. Like
Right.
It continues to burn all the way out.
Right.
So when you have a shorter barrel, you should use a different type of powder.
Right.
And then, your speeds go down.
And that's really the only benefit of the PRC over the Creedmoor is that you're going to get a couple 100 extra feet per second.
There's the big thing that a lot of like newer rifle hunters, they don't understand that a 300 Ultra Mag shoots the same bullet as a 308.
Right.
All you're doing is you're putting it, it's just faster.
Yeah.
So all of your 6.5s, like the PRC, Creedmoor, you're just faster. So
I loved their notes on recoil as well. And then somebody sent me a recoil table. And so my 300 PRC with the Hornady 212 grain Precision Hunter factory loads is give or take 30 foot-pounds recoil. The 6.5 PRC is like 16 foot-pounds recoil. The 6.5 Creedmoor is only like 11 pounds, 11 foot-pounds. And if you put a brake on those, you can, if you use like an Area 419 or something like that, theoretically you're getting rid of like 55% of the recoil. So you could actually get that 6.5 Creedmoor down to like 6 to 7 pounds, which means you can start walking around with a 6.5, 7.5 pound rifle and like legitimately be confident taking some of those longer shots, which is so funny to me because as we were talking about before the podcast, that's the polar opposite of why I bought a 300 PRC with a 212 grain bullet. You know what I mean?
And I think all of that would matter if you were hunting elk and things like that. Like when I'm hunting sheep and blacktails and goats and things like that, I don't think that matters as much. Definitely no expert in that field, but from the ones I've shot, I haven't noticed being like, I didn't have enough rifle. And then the big thing is your impact velocity with each bullet, like to know, like the copper bullets, you have to have 2,000 feet per second. Some of them are less than that for your reliable expansion. So your range is basically, you take your impact velocity. So as you cut your barrel down, you lose muzzle velocity, so your range has to come in. So
that was the other reason that I wanted a 700 yard outer limit. I don't plan to shoot that far, but that was kind of my goal. And I just reverse engineered the 6.5 PRC because I'm like, okay, I can buy the factory Hornady 147 ELDMs, and they're still going 1850 at 700 yards.
Or more than that. Because I reversed it. That Creedmoor I'm building, I'm only putting a 18-inch barrel. And if I can hand load those to be 2,550 to 2,600 feet per second with such an efficient bullet, it still has 1,800 feet per second at, I think it was 800 and something yards.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, and is that the kind of number you're looking for with these expanding bullets? Is like 1,800? Is that your cutoff?
I haven't shot anything far enough to say that matters.
Right.
That's that in the just different podcasts and different guys like that forum. He's saying that they've gone down to 1,600 and had reliable expansion.
And he says more so when they get into those Sierra tipped Match Kings and stuff like that. But the ELDMs, definitely if you're 1,800 north with the M or X, you should get reliable expansion.
For sure. And that's further than I'm planning to shoot.
Yes.
Anyway,
same.
I definitely,
you're trying to build in yourself a buffer, right? And it's like, listen, if it's going to work at 700, then I know it's going to work at 500.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard it is, like you said, to wrap your head around kind of the reason I went when I built a rifle to go to that 280, because in my head I went 6.5 Creedmoor, it's so small, it's not enough. But then when you learn more about everything to do with it, I've kind of come to the conclusion that you don't need all that. Yes, if you have a faster bullet, you're going to have less drop, so you're going to have less wind drift, more correction for air, so you range your deer at 450 yards and it gets up and moves 30 yards. Faster bullet will have less error than the slower
archery.
bullet.
Yep.
So there's that built-in, helps you with that. But with the new rangefinders, I have that SIG K4 image stabilizing one. Unreal.
Yeah.
But it has all the atmospherics in it. So you plug in all of your things and it does out to 800 yards, tells you your exact what to dial. So your elevation, your speed, as long as the bullet will do what it needs to when it gets there, the drop in today's, with the technology I have, really doesn't.
Did you have to do any truthing with your setup? Like, Did you have to, okay, so the math would say this bullet is going to travel this far and drop this much by the time it gets there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to go out and test that and then kind of feed data back into your system that, okay, it's actually a little bit different than that, but now we reliably know it's this much different, and kind of use that info to give you kind of real world proven drop data?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I've heard the Hornady guys talk about their thing, good data in, good data out. So the better, like once I had the rangefinder and I have a small Kestrel. So once you can get the proper data, it's very close.
Yeah.
But also the only thing I can say makes the difference from listening to different people that are experts on the topic is that every rifling is different. So your BC from every bullet once it's fired is different from every different gun. So that changes your final trajectory.
And 1 or 2 percentage difference, 500 yards downrange at 30 degrees.
It makes a difference.
Man, we're talking a couple inches downrange does not take a whole lot.
Especially having like that Garmin chronograph. So
the zero.
You know exactly how fast it's leaving the barrel.
Yeah.
You have the Kestrel, you know exactly what all your atmospherics are, but it still doesn't match.
Yeah.
Not by a lot, but enough that
It matters.
then you can enter that error into the ballistic program or whatever you're using.
And so you enter that back in, and then
that's your true data, and then so obviously the further you can do that too is better, because as you get further, that's where your errors stack.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I've definitely trued it.
Okay, excellent.
Sure.
That's good to know. That was a big thing for me, because I never took long shots before, and it wasn't. Again, we were having this conversation before that we kind of both agree, like, let's just say 300 yards is the cutoff for guys who don't want to sink a whole lot of time and energy into marksmanship and this level of obsession. It just simply doesn't matter as much if you're going to keep your shots under that. But once I started looking at the 500, 600 yard stuff, different winds, different angles, like, it's a big deal, man.
Yeah, and wind is the crazy one.
Right.
I did a long range shooting course in Penticton, and the guys were
Who is that guy? I think my buddy did one with the same guy.
I think that's a private range, but the people that rented it out, they were called Call Sign 66 from Alberta. They do a bunch of different
that's different
courses
than the
and
guy
stuff.
I've heard of, but okay.
And we went there, and these guys were like military shooters, unreal, and learning the things that make the differences. And that range had crazy winds at certain times of the day. There was times where we were shooting a 400-yard plate, and we were having to hold 2 feet
That's crazy.
of an error because of the wind.
Yeah.
And where we were sitting, there was no wind. But so reading wind and all of that was...
You hear it all the time now that I'm diving more into this rabbit hole. Like, wind calls are based. Once you get everything else set up, like your skill is there, the rifle is there, your true data is there. The wind calls are kind of the one variable that can make or break you, because there really is no way to measure what's going on between you and, especially if we're shooting cross canyons or there's blind winds. Like, there's really an art and a science to making wind calls in the mountains.
For sure. And those NRL matches and PRS matches, those guys, I've heard them say that the people that win are the ones that are the best with the wind.
Right.
Because effectively if you have enough money, you can buy every other step.
Yeah.
Right. You can take the training, you can have the rangefinders, your drop is constant. Like that's the easy one now.
Yeah.
It's your wind and your everything else that is always changing that you can't.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there that will tell you exactly what to hold for wind.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Fascinating. So, yeah, bit of a tangent, but I think very on topic for the things that I'm kind of focusing on the podcast right now. And I'm also glad that you brought up building a system specific for a type of hunt or a type of animal. Like, people ask me all the time, like, what's the best tent? And I'm like, what are you even talking about right now? Like, what season, what hunt, what terrain? Like, and I think when we try and get a piece of gear that's kind of good at everything, you end up having a piece of gear that's no good at any one thing. And so I've teamed up with Kalen from Modern Day Sniper, and he's going to do a bunch of like long range stuff with me. And so when we're going over my goals, I was hyper specific. I want a sheep and goat gun that's capable of 600 yards. And I think that's the kind of level of specificity you need. You can go get a do-it-all, but it's going to be like marginally acceptable at a whole bunch of stuff instead of really good at one thing. So I think that's the other takeaway for me is that you've been very specific in what you're asking from your weapon, and then you're building it to those specific goals.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's your 300 PHC. You can go hunt gophers with it. Like it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Right. But it might not be the best tool for that exact job. But there's a lot of people that fall into the camp that still bigger's better.
Yeah.
And if you shoot it really well and you don't mind carrying it, there's no right or wrong answer really. Like
Yeah.
shoot a sheep with a 300 PRC, it's definitely going to be better than like you have a bigger margin for error.
Yeah.
Comes down to what you want to carry, what you want to use,
Totally.
how many rifles you want to own. If you only want to own one rifle and you're going to hunt everything in BC, I mean, it wouldn't be a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
But if for what I'm thinking for this one, what I want to try and do with it, it kind of fit that bill and try it out, see what happens.
Are you going to stick with the same optic on the Creedmoor?
No, I wanted to find a lighter one.
Okay.
That one's 20 ounces.
Okay.
So I got the Swarovski Z3 because it's 12 ounces.
Yeah, super light. Now, did you have any issues? Because I think I remember one of the limiting factors with that one is how much MOA you can actually get out of it. So there's a limit with kind of how far out you can shoot.
Right, because it has, I can't remember the name of the reticle, but it has a bunch of marks in the reticle.
Okay.
Ideally, I like to dial. It does have a bit of a dial. There's a company in the States that if you send them the scope, they'll put a different dial on it.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many revolutions you'd get, but when I just crunched the numbers, the hash marks that are there will get me to 700.
Okay, so again, you're where you need to be. You
Yeah.
don't have any plans of going any further than that, and you just saved half a pound.
Right.
Yeah.
So and it's smaller, so I could mount it lower.
There's something I want to say to people listening here too, because what you're about to hear from me on a long series of podcasts and content is that I'm actually building a heavier rifle in a lighter caliber than I currently have. And then you're going to say, well, here's Adam sitting here getting super OCD about shaving down actions to get a lighter rifle. You are an extremely experienced marksman.
Well,
Listen, you've shot a lot of rifles for a long time, and I think because of your history with these guns, I think it's responsible for you to be shooting a gun like this. What I don't want people to be hearing is that I need a 6.5 pound gun to go into the mountains. I would urge people, a heavier gun is easier to shoot.
Yes.
And putting your bullet where it needs to go is ultimately the most important thing. So I think you need to start from your skill and work backwards.
a heavier gun with less recoil is easier to shoot. Take
Yeah.
the best shooter in the world who maybe shoots a 300 PRC, give him a 22.
Yeah.
He's going to shoot better.
shoot-
Everybody shoots better with lighter recoil.
Yeah.
So yes, this is going up in recoil. And to be perfectly honest, I've never shot a sub 6 pound gun.
Right.
Maybe I'm going to build this thing and I'm going to be like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And I'll be selling it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've always liked tinkering with things and trying new stuff. And I have the 280 Ackley Improved that works perfectly. I have no need for, it's just something I've wanted to do for a long time. So I've started gathering the parts and I'm going to try it. I have no idea if I'll even like it. Maybe I won't be able to shoot it at all because that's what you hear from the lighter the gun, the harder it is to shoot in field positions.
Yes.
Because every one of your errors is magnified.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get this gun and I'll be like, well, I can't hit anything past 400 yards. And then that'll be what that'll be.
But you'll be doing the testing, which I just went through the same thing. I actually had someone send me arrows. They were a heavier arrow. I got them. I started shooting them. I chronoed them, and last minute I had to use overnight shipping from Lancaster and build myself a dozen new arrows for hunting season because they were just too heavy. Mm-hmm. They were coming out at 255, 260 feet per second. And when I start to look at my pin gap out at 60 yards, I'm like, dude, that elk walks 5 yards. I just missed or I gut shot an elk. And I was like, that's just unacceptable for me. So I think it's okay to explore the outer bounds of lightweight, heavyweight with different weapons. But I think you need to sink the time pre-season into testing it out before going into the field with untested gear.
For sure.
Yeah.
And knowing what you can do with each rifle.
Yeah.
And doing with the weight of it and recoil and field positions and all of that makes a big difference.
What was the optics setup on the sheep hunt?
as far as like spotting scopes and things.
Yeah.
I have a Kawa 773.
Okay.
I had that with me, and Swaro EL 10 by 42s chest.
Okay.
My hunting partner he's got Maven binoculars and I think it's an Athlon spotting scope. I actually sold it to him. I had it before I bought the Kawa.
Okay.
And it was really good for what it was.
For what I think Athlon they've got some binos too that like for the price range you cannot touch them. Like if you're just getting into this stuff and you don't know if you're going to stick with it. I think they make fantastic choices for beginner gear or kids, or like if you're serious about this and you got a bit more cash, you can definitely step up. But the hit you're going to take in performance is like not really that much for how much cash you save. Like it's pretty crazy.
No, and being like a gear nerd or junkie or whatever, when I had that spotting scope, knowing that there's better, and you listen to anything and you watch any type of sheep hunting or mountain hunting, they all have top of the line this, that, and the other. So you kind of get sucked into I need this. But that Athlon spotting scope, even on this hunt, it shows you everything you need to know. You just might have to get a little bit closer, or you lose a little bit of time at evening or morning. Yeah, the cow is way better.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have making or breaking that hunt by any means.
I think there's 2 points that really matter here. One, I think the main difference between good gear and marginal gear is what's the best way for me to put this? Like the longer we're comfortable, the better we perform. Mm-hmm. You can go out there in Wranglers and a Mac jacket, but when you get wet and cold by day 4 and 5, you're going to be less effective. Mm-hmm. So you don't need it to kill, but it's going to stretch out your hunt a little bit. Optics as well, when you're looking through some of those like subpar optics, I think 8 to 10 hours behind that stuff, your eyes are going to strain. It is going to be... Now, you can get it done. Mm-hmm. If you're on a budget, live with the headache for a couple days. You will be fine. But if you've got the money, I think I don't think they actually help you find anything else. Other than the fact that maybe you stay a little bit more effective for a little bit longer because there's a little bit less eye strain. Also,
your eye still hurts. It's not like it's gone.
It's true, 100%. It's like goes from like might drop by like a 5 to 6% type of thing. Also, I think environmental conditions are like the great equalizer. Huge. Like when shit starts heating up, I don't care if you're looking at it with an ATX 85 or an Athlon.
No
heat
difference.
waves are heat waves, and they're going to shut you down no matter what. And in fact, I've started to come to realize that some of the better optics with the larger exit pupils actually exacerbate the waves, and so can sometimes actually make it seem worse. In some of the better glass.
On that recent sheep hunt, we had great weather. We got rained on a couple times, but for the most part, awesome weather. And I couldn't go above 45.
Yeah,
that Kawa goes to 60 power. But even when we were looking at a ram that was super far away, I could see more at 40 power than I could at 60 power.
Yep. So this is an excellent point. So I had a real benefit on my recent goat hunt because really 90% of my hunt was in 2 exact locations. Mm-hmm. One, I was there for 2 straight days. The other one, I literally sat on the same rock ledge for 6 straight days. So I am looking at the exact same landscape for multiple days in a row from sun up to sundown. So I got cold days, I got hot days, I got foggy days, I got days with lots of forest fire smoke, and days with not so much forest fire smoke. And what blew my mind was, I need to spend more time when I'm reviewing optics, testing them in multiple environmental conditions, because there's days when my ATX 85 feels like the Hubble telescope. Mm-hmm. I can go all the way into 60. I'm like almost counting, age rings on goats at 600 yards. I'm like, this looks like a photograph with like a film, like it's insane. And then the exact same scene 3 hours later or the next day, I can't zoom in past 40. Mm. And I came to the same conclusion. I'm actually getting more detail when I back off the zoom. And that's all environmental conditions. And you can't buy your way out of environmental conditions.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we're looking at a mountain trying to find sheep, and I found a wolverine like scurrying across the rocks, same spot the next day. And on 20, like there could be 10 sheep on there. Wouldn't have seen a single one of them.
Yeah.
Unless it was running for like the movement, you can't pick up anything. It's just the heat waves and environment where the sun is makes a big difference too,
100%.
obviously.
I think this is one of the practical reasons why, like, one of the biggest lessons I'm trying to implement this year is like, just sit down, like chill out, man. Like stop walking around so much, because I think you need to look at the same face in a couple of different settings a couple times to like really start seeing everything that's there. Because I mean,
so bad at that.
we were looking at the same face for a day and a half before we seen goats in some of these places. And I'm like, man, those might have been there the whole time.
They were there.
I can't tell you. Yeah.
Because where'd it come from?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I've found...
Because they're there for the next day and a half, so it's not like they're coming and going. Like,
and I've found sheep where you're sitting there for 4 hours and you find one in the middle. There's no way it came from anywhere.
Yeah.
And you find it bedded. So
Yeah.
it was bedded that whole time.
Yeah.
And just environmentals or light wasn't right. You couldn't see it.
yeah.
I
even think your grid pattern, because like I do my best to like overlap my passes by a very healthy margin. But if they start coming in at the limits of your border, like your eye is just not as focused, and you just don't have the same clarity on those outer fringes, outer fringes. And so yeah, glassing the same faces for multiple days in a row has been a huge like change for me this year that's resulted in me finding more stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Point blank.
It's definitely the biggest thing I would say that I try and do. I just don't. I'm horrible at it. You sit down, spotter, and you're like, well, you look at all the good spots first, which you probably like. You should just grid the whole thing. But I'm like, there's nothing here, and you kind of get bored, and you look at the same thing for 2 hours, and you keep hiking.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something there, and then now you hiking, it sees you and just walks away, and you never knew it was there.
100%.
Same with deer hunting, everything. I'm brutal for the patience game.
Yeah.
It's hard to learn.
Yeah, it is. And it was nice this year because it was taken out of my control. Like the first spot we got to, we just got shut down. We were ridge running and we got to the end, cliffed out, and it's like, so we either go back to the truck, and I'm like, well, we're all the way in here now. So like, let's at the very least, and I think we got there in the afternoon, and we decided to sit there. We're like, well, let's give it till tomorrow afternoon. We were originally going to give it one full day. And we had a whole half-day glassing session where we didn't find anything. Went back to camp, and we decided, well, we'll go back in the evening. And then in the evening, it was like the place just lit up. But you're also getting that evening sun that, like, because it's at a lower angle, the shadows tend to pop more. Like that midday sun can kind of flatten everything out on you. And yeah, it was just like, oh, there's a goat, there's a goat, there's a goat. And we're like, we were here 3 hours ago, and none of these goats were here. But if it had been in a normal course of action, we would have sat down, we would have spent that 2 to 3 hours glassing, we would have put our packs back on, and we just would have kept hiking.
And you hear a bunch of the actual pro hunters talk about the 2 feeding cycles in every area.
Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
Totally does.
I've never had the patience for that. Backtail or backpack mule deer hunting, you wake up first light and I glass a whole slope. If I don't see anything in the first 20 minutes, I'm like, well, there's another slope over there. I should probably go look at that one.
Yeah.
And then I spend a half an hour hiking over there and then hike here and hike there. And you're statistically speaking, you are probably way better off really taking the one slope.
Yeah, 100%.
Hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, talk to me a little bit about getting out, because now we go all the way in. Like, how's the hike out?
Mentally, it's getting further and further.
Actually, you know what? I'm sorry, I want to back up one step, because you did originally go in with the goal of trying to double up.
Right.
So 2 questions for you there. How did you decide you were going to be first up to shoot? And then how did you guys come to the decision that the responsible thing to do was just call it and head out with 1 sheep?
Right. So my hunting partner actually spotted the ram first, like right when we sat down. I'm sure we both would have seen it, but that's kind of how we've always done it. Whoever spots it, stalks it.
Okay.
And that being said, 2 years ago, we both took a ram. So we were kind of fresh slate, right?
Yep.
The ram he shot 2 years ago was 8 and super wide, lots of mass, wasn't full curl. So his thing was he wants for sure full curl ram. He wants a no look ram. He's looking for something bigger. This ram that we saw, as I said earlier, we knew it wasn't a monster by any means. We knew it was older. And from what we'd seen that hunt, we're like, well, let's go back and look at it. He's like, yeah, I think I'll pass it. And at that point, I was like, well, we're at the beginning of the hunt. I'm happy with that ram. Like, it's my plan when we were like, on your drive up, your dream, this is how it's going to go. I wanted a double broomed ram.
Right.
Last year's was big lamb tips. And I was like, I want a double broomer. Like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So this one was broomed on one side. So I was like, wow, it's
halfway there.
Halfway there. So I was like, I don't have a broomed ram. I'm more than, we know it's legal. It's old enough. More than happy to like take that ram. So he passed. So I took that ram and then got it back, kept hiking because we'd seen other rams. And then,
and how deep are we into our hunt? We go in a couple days before the opener. Are we like 4 days in by the time we shoot this ram?
Yeah, we hiked in on the 28th.
Yep.
And shot it on the 1st.
Yeah.
So the 1st was written off. By the time we got back to camp, it was 8 or 9 that night.
Yep.
Next morning, kind of took it easy in camp. And so then the next day, went out and glassed a bunch of different valleys and didn't really turn up too much. And we started running the numbers because we knew we were only about 8K from camp where we shot the ram.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we got 35 or more to go to make it back to the boat. Plus we want to like check out a couple things on the way. And we're just taking the time it took us to come in and dividing it back.
Yep.
We had to be back by the 9th. So we were like, okay, if we leave now, we're going to be home on the 7th because we hunted a couple days. So I think we kind of made that decision on the night of the 2nd when we were glassing. We were like, okay, we have all day tomorrow to shoot a second ram because we knew it was going to take us an extra 2 to 3 days and we'd have to come all the way back in. We wouldn't be able to do it in one load. So we're adding.
Okay. So it's not just the hunting time. It's also 2 trips to get gear and 2 rams out.
Right. From how far in we were.
Okay.
That was we were like, maybe we could do it in one load. There was a bunch of fairly technical, not great hiking that would just be super hard with 100 and we'd probably be like 140 pounds. Yeah. And we were like, well,
we're talking like double-digit kilometers, man. Like I want to be clear because like I've done my share of like 120, 130 pound hike outs, but it's like at worst, even my Colorado mule deer, which I brought out whole bone in with day hunting gear, I was like 9 kilometers.
Right.
And you're doing it once. Mm-hmm. 9 kilometers is not 35 kilometers. Like this is crazy.
Like, there's no way we're going to be able to do that for that distance. So it's 2 trips.
Yep.
And at that distance, it's a day to get there, a day to get back, and a day to get back. Yeah. So it adds 3 days. So, and we were a day boat out and a 2-day drive. Yep. So we're bringing the numbers back. We had till the night of the 3rd to shoot our second ram. Yep. Which then we were also laughing because we came in early. So we left on the 25th of July for this hunt. And we have till the 9th. And you're like, you do all of this travel. I don't remember what our kilometers were in the truck. 3,400 kilometers, 200 and something in the boat to hunt for 3 days.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, what is like, there's a point of every one of these hunts where you're like, this is not smart. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Right. I guess that's what makes a good hunt if you don't have that moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we said, Kate, we have till the night of the 3rd, and we were going to try a different valley that was a little bit closer to the boat. So I don't remember how many kilometers we hiked that and set up camp, hiked up in the morning, ended up finding another ram that was definitely bigger than the ram I took.
Okay.
Exact same ram though, he was super broomed on the one side. We could tell he was above the nose, but we were too far away. And with atmospherics again, I think the closest we got before we started hiking was like 1,200 yards. But he did skyline and we were pretty much level with him. So we knew he was full curl. Weren't sure by how much at that distance, but enough that we were going to go.
Yeah, it's worth a better look.
For sure. So that we spent most of that day because we were a long ways away. We had to go down a valley all the way around. And there was a couple ewes and lambs lower down on that mountain. We got all the way up to there. It took us, 5 or 6 hours by the time we kind of got up to where we needed to. It took a while to not get busted by the ewes that kind of fed our way. Made it up that ridge, and we got up there. It was probably 7 at night. and slowly crept all the way around, and you nowhere to be found. So we didn't see where he went or how he went. But that was our like last night.
Yep.
So we looked around for a while longer, and then ended up like couldn't find him. Went back to camp, and the whole hike out, he said that like from what he'd saw of the ram, he was gonna take it. We went there. We're sheep hunting. It's bigger, like quite a bit bigger than mine was.
Yep.
And but the whole hike out, we were like, man, are we happy that didn't happen? Like, both our feet. I had the first time ever my Achilles tendon like flared up, and I couldn't bend my foot. So I had KT tape and my boot tie. We were close to like tying sticks to it because it was super painful. Like halfway back, just foot problems. Like I didn't have blisters, but that ligament got inflamed and it wasn't happy with
what
all
are you
the
wearing
steps.
for boots?
I have the Kenetrex right now.
Okay.
I've tried a bunch of different ones. I tried the Kuyu boots for a season.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of the I forget the brand, Zamberlin.
Yep.
Like super stiff.
Yeah.
The Kenetrex are kind of in the middle, so they're more comfortable.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if, because that's moving my foot more, if the stiffer if my tendon would like that better. But they're way more comfortable to wear all day. The really stiff boots, you get back to camp and you can't wait to take them off.
Yeah.
These Kenetrex, I get back to camp and I forget I'm still wearing them, making dinner, and he's in his Crocs. I'm like, I should take my boots off. So unreal comfortable.
Yeah.
But
so you see those boots right there? So
I have those ones.
The Rebels?
No, mine start with an M. Scarpa, they're green
The
like
Mont
that.
Blancs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, so these are new, the Rebel HDs. I actually just recorded a review this weekend. It'll go up next week. These are blowing my mind right now. Mm-hmm. So these are hyper stiff, but they're built with the new, they call it the Easy Rocker profile. Mm-hmm. So super easy to walk on like flat. It's not a concrete brick on the bottom of your foot. And we both, before the podcast, we're both noting we both have really high arches. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes it even more challenging because you never want to take away all the spring in your arch because it's kind of like your natural like shock absorber in your foot. These are my favorite boot and I used to be in a pair of Schnee's Beartooths, which would actually be very analogous to those Kenetrex, like full leather boot, kind of a tall upper. I would say kind of that borderline 3 out of 5 stiffness, like relatively stiff, but still like an all-purpose.
Yeah, and the ones I have are, I think they're 400 grams. There is like some insulation in them.
Oh, wow. That's quite a bit. Yeah.
My feet don't sweat.
Oh, okay. I get super sweaty feet.
So I like that because now I go in September, like
Same
hunting, and I can keep my feet are warmer.
Yep.
Those Kenetrex are 10-inch. They're the first high boot. They felt weird when I first put them on, and then I kind of really like it.
They're so great for creek crossings too, man. Those extra 3 or 4 inches, as long as you just bounce across.
And I don't know if it's the wicking of the grass. Like they're by far the most waterproof boot I've ever worn.
So interesting, and I hate to keep sidetracking. How high of a sock do you wear?
They're above the top of the boot.
But like much, or do you go all the way to like the bottom of the knee?
No, just
like a couple
above.
inch or two.
Yeah, just regular like boot.
So I had this little epiphany because I've always gotten wet feet in this thick grass, the thick wet grass.
Yeah.
No matter what I do to my boots, my feet get soaking wet. And then I realized on this last hunt, because these boots were like relatively brand new, and I had a day hunting bears on Vancouver Island where I was basically like walking in creeks all day and my feet didn't get wet. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird that I can submerge these boots in water and they hold up a relatively good degree of waterproofness. And I recognize that, the pressure of the grass is worse than just regular water. Right. But I'm still like, this is not adding up to me. And then I do wear socks that go basically all the way to the bottom of my knee.
Right.
And I've done this in the past because my socks used to slip down into my boots. And then I start thinking about it. And I'm thinking about all that sock material that's getting soaking wet through my pants with that grass.
Yeah, without gaiters and rain
and
pants
I had
on.
gaiters, but it's so wet. They're like, the gaiters are literally like crumpled down to my ankles.
So it's wicking down into your boot.
100%. And if you look at osmosis and wicking, it's like all a function of equalization. Like the sock is just trying to be equally wet across the whole sock because that's what physics wants that sock to be. So if you have 2 inches of water above your boot, it can only bring in so much moisture. When you start having 18 inches of sock above your boot, like you've just 10x'd the amount of moisture. And so I'm going to be experimenting for the rest of the season with not wearing those socks and seeing if I can get in similar conditions, because I do think that wet grass is like the bane of hunters' existence when it comes to waterproof boots.
Wet. Yeah.
It's the worst.
Yeah. And every boot I've worn, they eventually get wet.
Now, do you treat your boots with anything?
These ones are fairly new. I've only had them. This is the first like full season. I did a bunch of hikes on them, so I haven't. But with the leather ones before, I would get the hand wig mix or whatever and just lather the stuff up, and I'd put them in the oven or in the sun and let it soak in.
But kind of like a waxy, like a combination of whatever it is, like a wax.
The Kuyu ones I had and the Zamberlins are all synthetic, so you couldn't really do that, or they don't say to. Both those I got wet feet. I've never had wetter.
Are way worse than
I've never had wetter feet than the sheep hunt I did with the Kuyu boots.
Okay.
Then they got stolen out of the back of the truck in Williams Lake, so I didn't have to worry about them anymore.
Well, that's one way to solve the problem. That's hilarious. Okay, I keep derailing you. We reverse engineer the math. Okay, we can't take a second sheep, so now it's time to pound it back to the boat.
Right. So we're working our way out. Kind of stayed in the same spots we did the whole way up. That was the worst rain we had of the trip, was our hike out.
Oh, so no way.
Then you got to wear your rain gear and, like you said, the brush, like pushing everything into you and everything. Yeah. And the hike out was just miles. And it's same as when you drive home from a hunt. The drive home sucks more than the drive up because you're excited on the way up. On the way down, we're excited because we were successful, but it was still just like you're worn down from the last 8 days of being out there, whatever it was. And
it's a lot, man.
It's a lot. And we knew we got to the one point where like, okay, we either stay here or we go till 10 o'clock tonight to make it back to the boat. And it's like, if we stay here, then in the morning, we got to put the heavy packs back on and put your boots back on. Whereas if we make it to the boat in the morning, got running shoes there, you load up and you're gone. So we made the choice to push through and make it back to the boat the second. So it took us from the night we didn't get that second sheep. Yeah. It took us 2 days and we got back to the boat the evening of the 5th.
So like 35-ish kilometers split up into 2 days?
Yeah. The last day I set a tracker because I knew I had enough phone power. Right. Because I didn't want to do it on the way in because you don't want to waste your battery.
It's crazy how much more juice it takes turning that tracker on, man.
Yeah. So our last day that we did, it was 27 something kilometers. Okay. The last day.
Crazy.
Back to the boat and then boated out. All was well with that. The water came down a ton. Right. Not enough. It's
crazy how fast those, especially once you get up into the mountains and you're dealing so close with where the water is coming from, what a variation you can see just in a couple of days. Like
2 years, the hunt we did 2 years ago, same thing. We had to do 2 trips back to where we got dropped off.
Yeah.
And we had our one camp was on one side of the creek, and we had the skulls and a little bit of meat left for our last trip. So we went, camped at the airstrip. Next day we come out. That night it rained a ton. And this is a creek that we hopped across with our boots on. We got to it and it was a river. Like you're not swimming it. It's like dirty, brown, zero, no chance we're getting across it. So we hiked back, camped for an extra night. Waited 24 hours later, we had to take off our boots because it was higher than, like, we couldn't skip across the rocks. Yeah. 24 hours later, we could walk across knee-high water, get our stuff. So it definitely made us think, if you're doing that again, keep your stuff on the side of the creek. We could see it. It was literally on the other side of the creek.
Oh, my God.
So it added an extra day because we had to just sit around and wait for the water to come down. But it goes up and down so fast. And you hear about that, but neither one of us thought that. Yeah. We're like, I'm sure the creek's gonna be a little bit higher. We got to it and it was feet higher, and raging. Like, no way you're crossing it.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you know how much your pack weighed going in?
Yep. Going in with our rifle, 1 liter of water, because we were creeks and everything. We knew we had pretty good water for the majority of it.
Yeah.
10 days of food. We were 72. I think I was 72 or 73 and he was 72. We were 1 pound off our pack. So just over 70 pounds, including rifle.
Yeah. I think
not chest pack. So
no, I never weigh that either.
But that's probably 4 pounds by the time you have your rangefinder, your binoculars, your
100%.
So, I mean, it all adds up, but yeah.
Yep.
70 73 pounds was our pack.
Yeah. I think that's about, whoa, what's going on, buddy?
And that's in that K4 5500.
Okay.
And before that,
Whoa, that's got to be a bit of a tight squeeze.
it was. So
Holy.
before that, I had the big Mystery Ranch, the Marshall.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Why'd you buy the 55 and not the
just
72?
Well, again, from listening to all their stuff.
Dude, you should have.
I
But they
know.
don't go to BC. I love Steve. I love their podcast, but they don't live in BC. And these guys don't do 10 to 12 day hunts where they're bringing all their food. They do elk hunts and other stuff. As soon as you start bringing 10 days of food at 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds a day, your pack is nuked.
Yeah, with just the food.
Also, like the extra rain gear we got to take, like it's just, yeah, man, I feel you.
It fit, but it was hard.
Yeah.
It was, I had one fold on the top clip.
Yeah.
And you're like strategically.
Yeah.
So we knew going in, there was a spot where the kind of the valleys all come, and we knew we were going to be leaving 5 days of food there.
Yeah.
So it was the whole time okay, as soon as we get there, that 5 days of food, now everything fits in the pack pretty good.
Perfect.
But as far as packing out meat and stuff like that, because we had less food, it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
But even using the
meat shelf.
The meat shelf with a pack that full, like some of those zippers, like you can see the stitching, and I'm just like, hopefully it holds.
I know.
So
people don't understand the physics of it. When I think meat shelves are handy, but you got to take it with a grain of salt, because the physics, when you start pushing that weight that far out from your body, like that pack just carries like trash.
Right. So I'm definitely going to be ordering just the pack, go with the
7200.
The 7200 just for the extra space.
Yeah.
And my thought was, I did it with the Mystery Ranch Marshall, which is 7,000, I believe it was.
Yeah.
When I do like blacktail hunting or day hunts, you just fold everything up and use it as your day packs. Like, this will work even better because it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
But for those big trips,
you need that 7200.
You definitely need the space.
You do.
So,
I'm a big fan of the 5000. I use it for elk and I use it for all kinds of stuff. But when it comes to my big stuff, I'm 7200 all day. And for people who only want to own one pack, I mean, you nailed it, dude. It's like an extra 2 ounces. Like
it's not much.
It's nothing.
No.
And I think with their strap system, it really does compress so well.
Yeah.
And then I kind of live out of my side pockets and my lid. And I just keep the main bag completely strapped down.
With maybe a jacket or something.
If I need some stuff, but not any of that stuff that I'm going to be like getting into on a regular basis.
Spotting scopes in the side pocket, tripod
on the other. Yeah, I got my
sure.
food in the top 100%.
Because I went down that rabbit hole of being like, they make a 1200, which would be all you need because I use the meat shelf.
Yeah.
But then when you like run the numbers, when you're just doing a day hunt, the extra 10 ounces that the pack weight doesn't mean anything.
No, because you're not carrying anything.
Yeah. So your pack's only 20. So it's 20 pounds or it's 19 and a half. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be definitely switching to the bigger one for the bigger trips.
We don't have time to do like an exhaustive gear list, but as you look back over the last couple years and doing like a series of these like longer mountain hunts, what are some highlights or takeaways that you've kind of implemented in your gear system, or even just things that haven't changed because they work so well?
Yeah, the tent and like shelter thing was one I've always been trying to like pick away at.
Yeah.
Started with MSR Mother Hubba, the 3-man, because again, for this, like when you're sharing a tent, the 3-man is only a 2-man.
Yes, and
of course, it's marginally heavier than the 2-man.
Yep.
So it makes sense. This year was the first year I got the Argali teepee tent.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to try a teepee for the weight, for the everything. It worked awesome.
Did you guys take the Absaraka?
The 4-man one, yeah.
Yeah, same one we had.
Yeah, so
that one was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's definitely bigger, like footprint. So when you're looking for a spot, like we hiked past a couple when you're looking for a spot, and you're like, well, that wouldn't work. And it got cut down little trees or moved rocks around or whatever.
Yep.
But once you have it set up, it's unreal.
It's crazy. Did you take the insert or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the bugs up there, like I really wanted to be the guy that was like, I don't need the insert. But when you wake up in the morning and you look up at that top of that and you see the amount of, we didn't have bad mosquitoes, but the flies were horrible.
Dude, horse flies the size of my thumb.
My forearms I was covered in
They were
horsefly
biting
bites.
through every base layer I put on. And like nothing bug dope wasn't even really doing anything.
No.
Because
so
they're
even
so
when you
monstrous.
we would stake that tent down
Flush
quite
to the
low.
yeah.
And you wake up in the morning and there's still 50 flies.
Yeah.
So for the weight, again, that tent with the carbon pole and the insert is still a pound lighter than my MSR one.
Yeah.
So
I think you're 4 pounds and a bit with the insert and the,
Right
and
in
the
there.
tarp and the pole.
Yeah. So
And I recommend the pole. I don't like leaving, you got to use 2 trekking poles. I don't like leaving my trekking poles at camp.
Right.
And that pole weighs next to nothing, that carbon pole.
Well, I mean, it's 9.5 ounces.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's
there
not
was-
next to nothing. That's
There was
that's
part of me
just
that
over
wanted
half a pound.
to take a string and like measure it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have
Just get a
I
stick.
Leatherman,
Of
so
course.
There's always sticks.
Yeah.
But I haven't gone that far yet. But it's you
The
definitely could.
Alpine there isn't though. Like
No.
we were definitely camped in
So
the
we
Alpine
talked,
this
but
year.
if you're going through that,
Pick it up.
well, instead of using a trekking pole, finish the hike with a.
Yeah. No, you make a very
you
good
could,
point.
but again, 9 ounces, but splitting because that tent you're splitting. So now
Yeah.
you're talking 4 ounces. Like,
Yeah.
is it worth even having to look for a stick?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I found with all the lightweight stuff that we've gone through, I'm almost going the opposite way.
I'm with you 100%.
I have a super light tripod, and this time I brought it instead of my one that was 9 ounces heavier.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was like, I wish I had my other tripod.
Yeah.
And once you're at a 65-pound pack, a 67-pound pack, because you have a few items that are a few ounces heavier, I couldn't tell the difference. Like, I don't think if you took a 5-pound weight and put it on or took it off my pack when we were hiking in, that you'd like even that. Maybe once you first picked it up, but if you did,
And I think there might be a little bit of a difference, like at the end of the day, like if we're going to quantify how much energy it burnt and stuff, like
sure.
I think it would take a little bit more. But if the impact of those extra 5 pounds creates, the question is, does the impact of that extra 5 pounds create more of a positive
Is it worth it?
impact on your hunt than negative? And I would agree with you. It's like I don't compromise on my sleeping pad.
No.
I take the Big Agnes Q-Core SLX. I know I could shave 8 ounces by going with a Neo Air or something like that. And it's like, I've tried it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. Like
I just
we're
got a
talking
new
about
pad this year. The Big Agnes makes it.
the Repeat SL.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the newer version of the
Yeah,
Q-Core.
it's 18 ounces. My
Yeah.
old pad, I had the Climate one with like the V pad, which
Yeah.
I loved because it takes. I had a different Big Agnes one, but it took so much breath.
Right.
That like I'm lightheaded. This one came with like the bag,
little stuff
It's
sack?
unreal. No,
Yeah.
like the
No, the
bag
pump sack.
Yeah,
Love that
First
thing.
time I've ever used it. It
I've-
weighs nothing,
Dude, it's everything.
and it's awesome.
The best.
So this pad is 18 ounces. It's insulated.
Yep.
It's however thick, super comfy, like way better than the last one. So that was a great thing that I upgraded.
Yeah.
But yeah, just different things that are worth the weight when you play lightweight. And I know like there's people that buy the lightest of everything, but then they bring so much stuff that your pack's super heavy anyway.
Yeah.
So there's like that fine line of, then you hear the sheep hunting guys that don't even bring hot, like a jet boil. So they just put, and I'm like, I'm not into that. Like
No.
I'll pack
I want
the
my
extra-
hot coffee and I like my hot dinner at night. And
Right,
I'm
like-
not, I will bring whatever I got to bring. I've also heard the argument that not cooking your food lets you get away with a lot less water. And in the Alpine, that can mean less trips down to get water. And I'm like, at the end of the day, you also need X amount of water for your body to function properly. Whether you bring that in through your dinner or through drinking it, either way, you got to get that much water into your body. So it's like, I'm not going to start purposely dehydrating myself so that I'll just like, that's the base amount of water I need to survive. Then that's the base amount of water I will go find. And it's like we were talking about earlier. I think having a hot cup of coffee changes my mood.
Everything.
Like, it makes me happier. It makes me hunt harder. I like having things to look forward to. And I think it's worth the wait. 100%.
In our food bag, I had 2. Never ate one of them, but Ichiban noodles.
Oh, yeah.
For like if it's raining and we're like
Yes.
stuck in the tent, I'm making for lunch. But
Yeah.
we luckily we didn't really have those, but they weigh nothing.
Yeah.
Just for those days.
Yeah, I took those. I started taking those on my winter goat hunts.
Yeah.
And I make bear pepperoni at home.
Yeah.
So I'd actually have some of the bear pepperoni vacuum sealed individually in my lunch kits.
Yeah.
And I would, and actually what I brought was the Lipton cup of soup, the chicken
Right.
noodle.
Yeah.
And I would chop up the
put
pepperoni
it
and
in.
oh my God, dude. Like,
Making your own faux.
yeah, it was unbelievable. Like, it gets the smoky flavor from
Mm-hmm.
the pepperoni, and you can see the little bit of grease floating in there. And I think the fat when it's the winter. Yeah, it's the little shit, man.
Yeah. But with the weight thing, there's so many ways to cut weight. So like
Yeah.
this year, I opened up every one of my freeze dried meals, took that big tag off the top, and and the little pouch.
Yeah.
But then they open. So I just took a piece of packing tape and I folded it over and I taped each one closed again.
Yeah.
We put everything in dinners and breakfasts into 4-day vacuum seal bags.
Okay.
And I vacuum sealed them for the way in because I knew with that small pack, right?
Yep.
So all our food was vacuum sealed. We even went as far, we vacuum sealed the tent and the insert.
Oh.
It went less than a quarter of the size because we knew once you're in there and you eat a few days of food, it's no problem.
Yes.
But going in when we tried, so I had that. I had our sill tarp, vacuum sealed that. We never ended up using it, so it stayed vacuum sealed. Just different things like that if you're not going to use them for sure.
That might be another area to look into cut weight because I'm a huge fan of a Dyneema tarp. And there is a huge weight savings between a sill. And that's another one where it's like, okay, that I will spend money on. Because my 7x9 Z-Pax tarp with 6 carbon fiber tent poles and 2 meters of Dyneema cord on 5 tie-outs is 5.4 ounces.
That's nothing.
It's nothing.
Right.
And to do that same thing with sill nylon and like paracord, you're like 10, 12 ounces. And so it's like, that's an area where like, listen, yeah, you're going to spend more money, but like you're going to get a real tangible benefit. And that can open up some room in your pack for like a better sleeping pad or like some other, a little bit more food or whatever. See, and I think this year I almost took too much food.
I do too. And it's one of those, I'm never hungry.
Right.
When I'm out there.
Yeah, same.
But
I get bored,
I know,
but I'm never hungry.
But I know that I should be eting.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's a chore. You get
Yeah.
back at 9 o'clock, you just want to go to bed. And you're like, well, I have to eat this whole pouch of food.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. I took 1.77 pounds for each day, and I think it was about 3,400 to 3,500 calories. And I think for elk hunting, that's great. For hunting where you're bivvy hunting, or you've only ever got 2 to 3 days, and you're like super active every day. What people don't realize about sheep hunting and goat hunting is there's a lot of days in between when you're kind of doing nothing. And so, yeah, there's ball busting 27-kilometer days, but then there's days where you're just sitting and glassing all day. You don't need that 3,600 calories every single day. So I think my target for next year will be like 32 to 3,300 calories and try and get it down to that like 1.4, 1.5, because even 0.2 pounds over 12 days is, 2.5 pounds. Like that's a lot. That's a significant amount of weight. So yeah, that was one of my takeaways from this year.
We even did a couple days I'd have an extra bar.
Yes.
I had like big days, small days.
Perfect.
But I never needed more than the small days. So at the end of the hunt, I had more than what my lunch bag weighed of like extras.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but
the wife stuck down, so we got to wrap this up. We could go on. There's the whole topic of like, killing respectable animals and big animals. Like we didn't even dive into. So I would love to like pick your brain about that on a later date. But anything else you want to close out with?
nothing major. With like you said, it's all. We've just gotten lucky, like with a bunch of the animals. Like you said, like the ones I have in the book.
Yeah,
A bunch of them weren't that I wouldn't have shot a smaller. It's just sometimes you get lucky and right spot, right time. Definitely.
I think also luck is, what do they say? Luck is the intersection of like opportunity and good planning. Like right. You were saying, it felt kind of funny to only go in there and hunt for 3 days. I think what you have been especially good at is the planning and the testing on the front end. Like when you go in there, you are being almost surgical about it because you've been so prepared and you recognize you wouldn't have had those lucky opportunities if it hadn't have been for like the work and the experience that like put you into those. So I do think that's where you kind of need to give yourself some credit,
sure.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Instagram, 4 Point Outdoors.
Yeah, I might be changing the name, but yeah, that's
okay.
That's what it is. I was doing some like Euro taxidermy stuff back in the day when I started that. So that's kind of where that came from. But it's 4 Point Outdoors is the Instagram.
I'll put the link for all that kind of stuff in the show notes. But I love having you around and I love having you in the Valley, man, because every year you kill some shit and I'm like, God, I got to step my shit up, man. Like I find it super inspiring. And I love, the fact that you nerd out on the shooting stuff and the gear stuff and everything else like it. So, yeah, man, thanks for coming on. I
No, it's been
appreciate
great.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Cool.